Hey guys, remember Fargo, Season 3, Episode 4, The Narrow Escape Problem. And yes, guys, I am still reviewing the show. I'm not sure why I fell off. I just did. Now, normally when I am behind like 4 episodes of a show, I review one big like combined review and I review all 3 episodes together. But for a show like Fargo that is so detail oriented and has a lot of things to talk about each episode, I can't possibly do that. I need to talk about, each episode individually, give the most cohesive review possible, and I really want to catch up on the season because I heard it really got amazing. And again, I didn't intentionally mean to fall off. There were just other things that got in the way, and I was binging Twin Peaks, and I just haven't had the time to really review Fargo. But I'm going to catch up definitely on these next 4 episodes, and I was really looking forward to this episode because, as you guys know, the last episode I reviewed back episode 3, I know that was so long ago, but episode 3 was essentially a bottle up, well, not a bottle episode, it was very much a one-off where you had Gloria, she solved the whole Thaddeus Mobley mystery. We found out more about what was going on there. We basically closed off that storyline. It also got me much more invested into the character of Gloria. I thought they did a really good job with that. Carrie Coon just such a revelation. I could watch her for literally an entire episode, and I did. It was most of the episode was just her. That episode was just phenomenal, but I was very interested in getting into the regular narrative of the show, and this was another really great episode. I will admit this was very much a table setting type episode, but there was a lot of great stuff going on here. The stories are definitely starting to intertwine, and we're finally starting to see Gloria talk to some of the characters that we've met, and I really am loving where the season is headed. But let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to get into it. And let's start with the opening here because I really did love this opening. We see a narrator who actually is Billy Bob Thornton, who of course did play Malvo in season 1. Basically, he's telling us each character is going to be represented by a musical instrument, and he then begins to match characters in Pierre the Wolf with the key characters in this season of Fargo. And I thought this made sense because we haven't seen these characters for like an episode, so this is kind of a reintroduction to these characters. Because we see Emmit is played by the flute, he is the duck, and Ray is played by an oboe, Nikki is the cat, played by the clarinet, and as these characters are introduced, we're watching Ray complete his disguise, and now he looks much like he looks like Emmett. So clearly, Ray and Nikki have some sort of scheme up their hands. We don't really know what that's all about. But Cy is the grandfather of this tale, and he's played by the bassoon. And Varga's thugs are the hunters, shotgun blast played by the kettle drums, and Varga is the wolf, which is played by French horns. And Gloria is clearly the Peter of the story. The one that's kind of good natured and the one that's just normal and not involved in all this crazy shit. She's played by the strings. And a lot of people said this came off as pretentious, but I thought this made sense, honestly. Fargo's always kind of done weird stuff like this, and I thought this actually really did make a lot of sense when you think about it. Varga very much is the wolf, Gloria very much is the Peter, and what's cool is that they do stick to this. Like, there's various musical cues throughout the episode, certain musical cue for Varga or one for Peter. I really did like the way the show did stay committed to this. That was a really cool motif overall, and it could have been very pretentious, but I thought it worked really well in the show, definitely. I thought it was definitely very well done. And as the music ebbs and flows, we're informed the events took place in Minnesota in 2010. The orchestra plays as the title card graces the screen, and Gloria is driving her police car to St. Cloud, and Nikki then delivers Ray to a bank where Emma has rented a safe deposit box. She reminds me of a meeting with a high roller later that day, and then he goes off to impersonate his rich brother. So again, we know they have something off their sleeve. Obviously, it involves the safety deposit box, and you can tell that she's very confident that this is going to go. But we'll get into how that really turns out. So, for a scene like this, honestly, I think this is the main reason why they wanted Ewan McGregor to play both these characters, because how else could a scene like this have worked? I mean, obviously, you can have two people that look the same, but no one looks exactly the same. And the fact that Ewan McGregor is playing both of these characters, again, I think really to show how amazing he is as both of them. I mean, you really did believe that this was Ray pretending to be Emmett, when they easily could have made it so it felt like it was just Emmett. But no, this is just Ray pretending to be Emmett. And an overly enthusiastic new employee welcomes into the bank. The manager shoos her away to fetch Emmett a soda, and then invites him into chat in his comfy private office, and he explains how he lost the key to his safe deposit box, and the manager is sympathetic, but says he'll have to go order a new key, and it'll take a week. And during this conversation, he's been very meek and obliging, but now he decides to follow Nikki's instructions and use his power to get things done. Again, you can tell Nikki's the one kind of pulling the strings here. He threatens to pull his account, saying he'll find a bank that puts the customer first, and the manager immediately gives in and will call someone in to drill the lock ASAP. So now he's found his footing. He also demands $10,000 from his accounts, along with $1 in quarters, and the manager then stammers a bit. Emmit gives him a look. The man then carves again, and he'll do the paperwork for Emmit. So it seems like everything's going fine. They got the safety deposit box. Everything's going great. The lock is drilled, and Emmit now has the box in his possession, and inside is a velvet bag with the word Laverne embroidered across the middle, and Emmit then opens that, and it's filled with dust. We don't know what this is all about, but he tastes it, immediately spits it out, and then he dumps it into this nearby trash can. He rummages through the ashes, and nothing is there. We don't know what that's all about, but Ray then rushes back to Nikki, who's waiting outside the car patiently. He's excited that he got the $10,000 from his brother, but she wants to know why he took so little. Like, why only $10,000? I mean, he could have taken literally as many as he want. Why did he take only $10,000? And he reminds her that they're not crooks. And that's a very important thing that I think Ray really sticks by. Remember, Ray is a parole officer. Nikki was his criminal that he was supposed to not fall in love with, but he did. And you can see that Ray's always kind of trying to do the right thing, and Nikki really doesn't. I think it really just shows the contrast between the two. I mean, Nikki is a criminal. That's something that we've seen, and that, while she does love Ray, she still is a criminal. And in many ways, yeah, they are crooks because, I mean, they still did kill Maurice, so it's clear that Ray's trying to move on from that, but, I mean, you still did kill Ray, so you technically are criminal, and they only took what was probably fair market value for the stamp, and I thought that was a pretty fun scene, the way that Ray was trying to make sure that they weren't crooks and things like that. So Silent informs Emmit of Ray's treachery, and they're both disgusted that Ray would screw with the cremate remains of Emmett's dog and withdraw money from his account. I mean, why would he do something like this? And again, at this point, they really don't expect much from him because, as we know, this feud is, like, fully played out at this point. Like, this is fully Emmit versus Ray, and the topic changes to the suicide of their lawyer, and they both think that Varga had something to do with his death. I mean, we know, obviously, that is the case, that it wasn't that their lawyer committed suicide, and why would he? I mean, he was so insistent on helping them, why would he just straight up off himself? There's clearly more to it than that. So, Sai suggests they meet with Widow Goldfarb, who wants to buy into their company since this Varga thing is such a mess. So the kettle drum pounds as Varga's thugs leave the office with a briefcase, and again, it's just like Billy Bob Thornton said, that whenever the kettle drum plays, that's what's going to be the thugs' entrance, and Emmit asks what the shit they're up to, so he clearly does not trust them. But the problem is, Emmit isn't exactly in control. Varga's already taken a lot of control of basically everything, and this is kind of the episode where Varga starts taking control of basically his entire life, and kind of just making things worse and worse and worse for Emmit, and I don't really know if things are going to get better. I mean, Varga, like I said, we've never really had a character quite like Varga before, who's so vindictive, so controlling, who wants to basically take over everything, and in this episode, we really do start to see where his true motives lie. So Gloria's then going through Maurice's belongings at the coroner's office, and among the items is a page torn out of the phone book with Emmett's address, and she looks at LaFay's dead body on the table, and it's not a pretty sight as the top of his head is missing where the air conditioner unit smashed into him, and again, Fargo has never really been afraid to do graphic crime scene things like this, so she goes through his wallet, and she finds a St. Cloud Parole Board office business card, and I like that now that she is, moved on from Thaddeus, now she can fully focus on this case. I like that this case is really starting up here, and she meets with her new boss, the new chief, and he is basically the biggest asshole we've seen in terms of, someone who's in her office. This guy is a straight-up asshole, but Shea Wigham does such a great job with making you hate him, and he doesn't understand why she continues to investigate Maurice. Like, why does she want to do this? What's so interesting about this guy? I mean, there doesn't really seem like there's much else to it. He was a loser, drug addict who randomly selected her stepdad's place, according to, Chief Mo Damick, and for some reason, and, he doesn't really feel there's much of a reason to do that, and I think he does kind of a point. Yes, he's still an asshole about it, and yes, I don't think this is someone that Gloria should really be listening to, but, I mean, think about it. Maurice was an idiot. He really was. It's not, Emmit or Ray's fault. It's his fault because he fucked up the address. That's not where they want him to go. They want him to go to Emmit and kill him. That's what they want him to do, obviously, so they want him to steal the stamp from Emmit. He went to the wrong East Stussy. That's his fault, so I do understand why Damick is kind of, the way he is there. So For some reason, he starts talking about Fallujah and IEDs, comparing random deaths in America to the randomness of deaths in war. And he believes it's just a matter of wrong place, wrong time, and wants her to close the case. He doesn't feel like any of these deaths were intentional. He thinks they were all just random, and Gloria, however, isn't about to let it go. She knows there is definitely more of the case, and there's no way she's just going to close it now. I mean, she's already so into it. Why would she just close it now? She's going to spend more time on the case, even without Mo's approval, which I love. I love that she's not stopping. I love that she's going to continue this as much as she thinks, because, I mean, there is still a lot to the case. Obviously, she's not just going to stop. That'd be a terrible thing to do. So she then goes over to the St. Cloud parole board, and as she's about to enter the building, Nikki walks right by her, and although they've actually never met, Gloria looks back and watches her leave. So it's clear that she is starting to, I don't know if this foreshadowing these two are going to interact at some point, but I would not be surprised if Gloria starts to get suspicious of Nikki. And she then adds another incident being invisible to her running tally as the automatic door still does not open. So we still see this as a problem with her. We don't really know what's going on here. It's happening to her. It's happening to Nora Durst. We haven't seen it happen as much with Nora Durst. Who knows what's going to happen to season that series finale of The Leftovers. But again, Gloria just shit out of luck. I don't know what's going on here. So the clerk then looks up Maurice's parole officer and tells her that it's actually Ray, and Gloria then steps into the restroom before visiting Ray and can't get the water or soap dispensers to turn on. Another example of her invisibility to sensors. Again, we don't know what this is all about, but none of these machines seems to work for her, and a woman then calls up for help to ask for with a feminine product, but Gloria doesn't have her purse, and she offers to ask the clerk, but the woman tells her not to bother. And it turns out the woman in need is also actually a cop, and she introduces herself as Winnie Lopez. And this is the kind of stuff Fargo does so well. Just these random intros to other characters. But honestly, I really do like that Gloria does have Winnie here, because, you know, before she's been all alone, it seemed like they were going to close the bureau. Winnie, I think, is going to be the person that really does help her keep it open. I mean, Winnie isn't working in the same bureau as her and things like that, but you get the sense these two are going to work together, and I do like that Gloria does have someone. Like, she's not completely outnumbered here. Like, obviously, she knows something else is going on, and you can definitely get the sense that Winnie is very much going to help her with what's going on here. So during the scene, we get a bit of a backstory from Winnie. Basically, she's from St. Cloud Metro, and she's trying to get pregnant, and she's going into graphic detail about her sexual positions, and Winnie has no problem getting either the faucet or the soap to work, and it works just fine for her. So we don't know what that's really about, and Gloria then stands there dumbfounded because obviously, I mean, it's not working for her. It works just fine for Winnie. What the fuck is wrong with her? Why isn't it working for her? I mean, again, I think that's just something that I don't know if the show's going to really answer. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but we'll have to see really what's going to happen there. I don't know if it's, again, I think it's trying to symbolize her eccentric ways and how different Gloria really is and how not caught up with the times. Remember, she doesn't use Facebook and all that kind of stuff, so I think that definitely is a big part of it. But elsewhere in the building, Ray's been chatting with Nikki on the phone. Gloria knocks on his office door, and she's stunned to learn his last name is also Stussy. And I love that little reaction, because who else was named Stussy? Well, that would be her father. Her father, Enos, was Enos was also Enos Stussy. So obviously, you knew this was going to come eventually. I've talked about this before. I mean, this was definitely intentional. Nothing in this show is not intentional, and this was very intentional the way they did that. So Ray says it's a pretty common name. Gloria explains that she's there investigating Maurice's involvement in a murder, and Ray tells her that he heard Maurice had a run-in with an air conditioning unit, and Gloria knows that she's seen the body for herself, and she's trying to understand why Maurice would drive 30 miles out of the way to grab a page from a phone book and then search Enos's house for something specific before killing him. Why would he just do that? Doesn't make any sense that he would actually do that. So Ray then lets her know that Maurice was actually a pothead, and he was going to be hauled in for flunking his, pee test, but then he died, and that's it. Obviously, he's not willing to go into what actually happened. He tells the interview's over. Gloria leaves him her card in case Ray thinks of anything, and what's great about the scene is that Gloria is not suspicious of Ray. Like, she actually thinks that Ray is telling the truth here, and it's because Ray's doing a good job with this. He's got the story all laid out, and Ray's day really doesn't improve. His boss actually calls him in for a meeting with the deputy director, and they show him photos of he and Nikki, and now Ray's in big trouble. Remember, they were not supposed to be romantically involved. That was the one rule. He can do whatever he wants with her, but he can't be romantically involved. And now it seems like his job could possibly be on the line. It's against the law to actually date a parolee. I mean, again, we've talked, they talked about this in the beginning, and Ray only has one shot at keeping his job, and this is, if he doesn't, if he loses his job, then that's kind of it. So he has to lie and say it only happened once, which isn't true. I mean, obviously they're dating, but Ray kind of has to lie to get by at this point. He'll get a suspension, but he won't lose his job, and Ray just can't do that. He can't possibly accept it. And he declares that they're in love and they're getting married, and his boss threatens to revoke Nikki's parole, believing that she's actually hoodwinking Ray, that there's no way that this girl actually loves him and actually cares about him. He thinks that she's just scheming him. So Ray swears that she's not a bad person, goes off about their bridge team, and this scene where Ray's talking about, I mean, you can tell that he really does care about Nikki, but the question is, does she really care about him, or is she just trying to do this for herself? Does she have something that she's trying to do? Now, Mary Elizabeth Winstead said in interviews that Nikki does care about Ray, but she could very well be deceiving us. I mean, there have been many actors who have done that before, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mary Elizabeth Winstead is doing this right now, because he's saying everything, she's not a bad person. His boss gives in. Instead of locking up Nikki, they're actually going to fire Ray, but he has to sign documents saying he won't sue them for wrongful termination. So he actually is unemployed at the end of this episode, which I was very surprised about, but yeah, he's now unemployed, and again, it just shows how willing he is to do anything for Nikki. Nikki kind of always takes principle over everything. I mean, what was the whole point of Maurice? Was to get a ring for Nikki. That was the whole point of doing all this. He really cares about Nikki. It shows how much he really will do anything for her, and that's something that I really have loved, is his devotion to Nikki, which I really do feel is going to end up destroying him in the end. I really do think that while he does care about Nikki, Nikki does care about him, but wouldn't go to nearly the lengths that he would for her. I don't think she would really do the same thing. So Ray, now unemployed, he leaves his office for the last time. He finds Sai waiting for him in the parking lot, and Sai doesn't say anything. He's just kind of sitting there, and she just points at Ray, and Sai drives away in his hummus, and Ray's car then comes into view, and it's now been booted. So again, Ray's really not having the greatest day. Everything's kind of just going to shit for him at this point, and Sai then returns to the office, and we see Winnie is waiting for him in the lobby, and he's obviously confused by her presence. I mean, who is this random girl? Why'd she just show up here? And he stammers when she wants to talk to him in private, because Varga's henchmen are actually hanging out in the lobby listening in, and she finally explains that she's there to find out about a Hummer that did damage to another car. Obviously, we know what that's about. We know that was all what, Sai did to Ray's car. So Sai is freaking out at this point. I mean, holy shit, they could be, on to him. And she's investigating the damage done to Ray's car. And since the vehicle was registered to Stussy Lots, obviously, she very much is suspicious of that. So Winnie wants to know who was driving it. Sai gets flustered, and he doesn't understand why, if Ray's not pressing charges. She's investigating the incident, and Michael Stolberg in this scene, which is so great. He did such a great job with trying to keep his cool, but at the same time, you can tell he is freaking out at this point. I mean, he is so frantic. He can't believe that she's asking him this question. I mean, he has no idea what to do here, and Winnie lets him know the owner of the other car he hit on the way out of the parking lot does not want action taken. It's a police matter since the driver actually left the scene of the accident, and Sai promises a girl from HR will call her the next day with info on who was driving. So again, he needs to try to keep his cover, and he seems to be doing a good job so far, but I don't know how long they're going to be able to do that. So Ray then drowns his sorrows in a bar, one arm leaning on his box of possessions he took from him from his office, and Nikki is having to entertain their potential backers. She apologized for Ray being a no-show, saying that he's usually punctual, and she has no idea of all the stuff he's really gone through. I don't know if he, told her about it, but at least at this point, we're led to believe that she does not know that he was fired and all this stuff. So Varga then shows up at Emmett's house, and we get this incredible scene, which David Thewlis just acted the hell out of this scene. I loved everything about this. He shows up unannounced at dinner time. He invites himself to dinner over Emmett's objections, making himself at home. And, again, Emmett has no control. He's just, wherever he goes, he kind of just takes over. And Varga tells Emmett's wife he has some amazing business opportunities discussed with her husband, saying he wants to broaden their partnership. And you can see that Emmett, again, he is visibly shaken here. I mean, he has no idea what to do. He knows he's kind of outnumbered, and Varga compliments Emmett's business acumen and pulls out a stack of papers to be signed, and the papers will actually make Varga a partner in Stussy Lots, which is insane, but that's what he wants to do, and Emmett says he's not going to sign. There's no way he's going to do that. Emmett still wants him to take back the money he borrowed, but Varga just kind of tells the story. He's not willing to own up to his actions. He's just kind of saying whatever happened, and he's just going to kind of, do what he wants. So he tells a story about how those who aren't in the 1% will eventually come for those they believe are filthy rich. That's kind of what's happening to Emmit right now, that, Emmit's come to Varga for money, and it's gone horribly wrong, and he wants Emmit to amass so much money he can be protected from threats. That way he has as much as possible, and then out of the blue, Varga points to this donkey picture on the wall, and he wants to know if that's where the stamp used to hang, and Emmett's confused by Varga's knowledge of the rare 2-penny red U.S. misprinted stamp. So I don't know how Varga has any knowledge about this, but Varga also knows about the feud between Emmit and Ray, and Emmit declares that that's off limits, and we don't know what's actually going on here. But it turns out that he's actually been listening into all of Emmett's phone calls. So, I mean, this guy is really, Emmett's really in trouble here. And this could end up really badly for Emmett. And he tells Emmett he's currently in the frying pan, but could be in the fire if he's not careful. The peasants will be coming to get him. And he then announces he's Emmett's guardian angel. He also informs his new partner that the bank increased his credit line by $25 million. He confirms he studied Emmett's books, and now he's going to be in the billionaire business. But first, Varga wants to both assure that Ray and Nikki won't be problems. And we don't know what he means by that line. I mean, to me, Varga's willing to do anything to make sure that Emmett is substantially rich. And I think he wants to make him rich, but I don't think he wants it for his benefit. I think he's going to take all the money and he's going to leave. Like, once Emmett is rich, he's just going to take that money for himself. And he calls them both losers, says that neither will be a problem. And again, you can tell that Emmett is visibly shaken here, but at the same time, he really has no other choice but to listen to what Varga is saying. And I think this is going to end up much worse for Emmett than he thinks it will. So now we return to the narrator, who says that grandfather's angry Peter went to the meadow, a wolf could have attacked, and Peter would be in trouble. Kind of what's going on with Varga right now, that Varga is ready to attack, and Gloria could very well be in trouble with what's going on, because Gloria is supposed to be our Peter. I didn't really understand that line, because Gloria is not the one in trouble. Varga's not coming for Gloria. He's just coming for Emmett and Ray, so I didn't really understand that, but over Gloria's place, she studies the St. Cloud Parole Board business card Lost in Thought. The narrator tells us that Peter didn't pay attention to the warning because Peter isn't afraid of wolves. And I think that's very much true. Gloria is in a place in her life where she's not really afraid of this stuff, and she's tugging Nathan in for the night. Winnie shows up to talk to her about the investigation, and she explains about the car crash and how the persons responsible work for a company owned by the victim's brother. She ties it into Gloria's murder case because the same last name as Gloria's murder victim. So is the murder victim was a Stussy, and the guy whose car was run into, the parole officer Gloria visited, and Ray Stussy, and Ray's brother owns Stussy Lots, which leased the Hummer, and the guy who owns the company, Emmett Stussy, lives in Eden Prairie, while Ennis Stussy was murdered in nearby Eden Valley, and all this stuff is sort of coming together. She's kind of realizing what this all means, and that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where we're going to go from here. So overall, guys, this was another really great episode, but let's talk about where we're really going to go from here, because now that we have Winnie here, obviously, Gloria didn't really think much of the Stussy. She just knew they had the same last name. She didn't really think much of Ray. Now that Winnie's on the case, though, I really think she's going to start to put things together here, and I don't really know how this is going to go. I mean, again, they have the same last name as her, and I think that definitely is going to make this a much more personal case for her than she really thought it was, because, I mean, she's willing to see this through, and now she's realizing that this is definitely connected to her father's murder, when in reality, I mean, it is, but it wasn't intentional. Like, they didn't mean to murder her father. That was Maurice's stupidity. That's what killed her father, because he went to the Ron E. Stussy. That had nothing to do with what Ray wanted to do. He just wanted to take the stand from Emmett and then leave. That's really all he wanted. What's going on here, though, is a much worse situation, so I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but I'm glad that Gloria does have a partner, because I was not looking forward to a season of her being completely outnumbered and everyone not listening to her. I'm glad that she does have Winnie to back her up. Winnie knows very well what's going on. She seems to be putting things together, and I really do like the way that they are starting to close in on this case. Like, they really do have an idea what's going on here, and I mean, this is probably the fastest we've gone with information. It seems like the case is going to not be, it's going to be a big deal, but I think there's just so much more going on that the case is going to be the least of our worries this season, really, because what Emmett's going through is a much more tumultuous situation. The whole thing with Varga is just insane. I mean, at this point, like I said, Varga's just willing to do anything to take basically everything from Emmett. I mean, if he could take his wife, I think he would. If he could take his house, I think he would. I think what Varga wants to do, he wants to make Emmett substantially rich, obviously, which Emmett is fine with. He wants to be very rich. He wants to be very successful in this company. He's fine with that. What I don't think he realizes is I don't think that he is adhering to him. I think he's going to take all his money. I think he'll, make sure that he has all the money he can, and then he'll just rob him dry, and Emmett will just have nothing. And I would not be surprised if we end the season with Emmett completely bankrupt and Varga winning, because I just don't think that Emmett is really understanding what this is really about. Sai is starting to catch on. Like, he knows definitely something is up with Varga, and he's starting to put things together that, why would our lawyer just commit suicide? Emmett's not thinking much of it. He's like, oh, it's not really a problem. He's just focused on the feud. So Emmett is very naive in this situation. He is kind of only interested in the money. He's not really focusing on what's actually going on here. He's not realizing that this is someone who's been following him and is listening to all his conversations and clearly is trying to destroy his life. And again, I think this is a very interesting character because a lot of people are comparing Varga to Malvo, and I think it's an unfair comparison. Malvo wasn't completely bad. Like, he was there to show Lester his bad side. Like, everyone has a good side and a bad side. That was Lester's, dark side. That's really the point of Malvo, was Malvo trying to show Lester his dark side, and sure, obviously, he wasn't really a good guy, but Lester really wasn't either. Here, though, this is a much different situation. Emmett's in a position of power, and he thinks he's going to get one thing from Varga, when in reality, Varga is just probably going to take everything from him, and I don't think Emmett really understands, what he's really agreeing to here. What he's agreeing to here is very shady, and if I was Emmett, I would just get the hell away from Varga, but of course, Emmett doesn't realize what is really happening here, so we'll have to see really what's going to happen. I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see the way that really does play out, and especially when Varga says, I'll do whatever I can to Nikki and Ray. I think he means it. I think he means, like, he'll kill them if he has to, so I don't know what's really going to happen here. I think, especially if Emmett starts to rely on Varga, this could end up really badly for his brother and Nikki. Let's talk about Nikki, though, because obviously Ray's now out of a job, so I don't really know what's going to happen between him and Nikki, if he's going to tell her what happened, if they're, what she's going to do to that. And should he really be trusting Nikki? I mean, I do think that his bosses have a point that, hey, I mean, she is a criminal, remember, and she might not care about him nearly as much as he thinks she does. I think maybe he's kind of in over his head with that. I do think she cares about him. I think there's definitely a level of care there. I don't think she'd do everything she would. I think if she didn't care about him, she very well would, just ignore him. But I do think that there's a certain level of care that he has for her that she does not have for him. So I don't know exactly what this is all about. We'll have to see really where that's going to go. And again, I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. Overall, guys, I really did love this episode. Really great stuff going on here. The show is continuing to really impress me. Again, I wasn't as on board with this season, but now, as a piece are coming together, I'm getting more and more on board, and I definitely really did love basically everything about this episode. Really, my only complaint, like I said, I don't really have one, honestly. I don't really think there were many complaints to this episode. This was a pretty solid one overall. I was very impressed with the way this one did turn out. I'm overall really loving this season. I'm definitely going to give Fargo Season 3, Episode 4, the Narrow Escape Problem, a 4.5 out of 5, or an A-. So over, guys, I'm in this episode of Fargo. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Let your thoughts. I know this episode was so many weeks ago, but again, I'm going to try to catch up on each episode, since, and I will see you guys for my next video review, which should be for Episode 5, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.